30 minutes of power.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. We have our wonderful host here, Jory O'Neill. She is here to give us 30 minutes of power, 30 minutes of the word, 30 minutes of encouragement to take us throughout the day. She's a loving wife, a loving mom, a great friend, an encourager, one with many, many talents, too many to name on set. So please welcome Miss O'Neill.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate that warm welcome. Good evening, ladies, to another segment of 30 Minutes of Power. I'm your host, Jory O'Neill, and I'm excited and I'm encouraged because just like you, honestly, I have no idea what's going to come out of my mouth. So it's an exciting evening to be with you. I had planned to speak about dreams and being deferred, and we'll hear about that another time. So God gave me a word about an hour ago and totally just shifted what I wanted to share. And a lot of it is based off of what I have experienced and what I've been experiencing, honestly, for the last 2 years. So tonight's message is entitled The Consequence of Obedience. I didn't say that improperly. The consequence of obedience. So we're going to talk about some of the consequences that occur when you actually obey the Lord. So I don't know, by a show of hands, how many of you feel like where you are, you're not supposed to be there? In terms of maybe your profession, your career, even maybe some of the locations that you're currently living in, right? Like feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. God has called me to be somewhere else. And for some reason, I'm still here and I don't know why. I just don't know why, right? And so sometimes we're supposed to leave this place, this job, this location, but the fear, oh my gosh, the fear is overwhelming. It's absolutely crippling. And I'm going to share from what I've been experiencing the past 2 years. And if my boss hears this prior to me giving my letter of resignation, all right, you saw it coming, okay? You just saw it coming. The writing was on the wall. So 2 years ago, COVID happened, and right before COVID happened, or the pandemic began to spread, I injured my ankle. And after I injured my ankle, I started my business, right? Fun Friday Comedy started, IOH Entertainment began. And honestly, a lot of that was birthed out of feeling like, okay, if I can't walk anymore, how can I teach gym, right? So I am by trade, by profession, a phys ed teacher. But I'm like, how can I do that if I can't walk, right? And so fearing the loss of income, I said, okay, I got to get creative. We got to figure this out. And so it wasn't done out of a faithful move. Honestly, it was done in fear. And so one of the first topics I want to speak to you about is in Romans 14:23. Okay, so in Romans 14:23, I'm actually going to read from the Amplified version of the Bible. Yeah, we're starting right away in the Bible because this thing, when it hit me, it hit hard. So Romans 14:23 in Amplified version says, but the man who has doubts is condemned if he eats. Now, this entire passage, if you want to go back and read it, I would encourage you to do so. It's talking about if you're eating something and someone else doesn't eat it, will you eating that thing cause your brother to stumble? And this is mainly concerning individuals who ate pork or who ate different types of meats, and they were hanging around folks who didn't eat meat, right? And so after it says, but the man who has doubts is condemned if he eats, because his eating is not from faith, and everything that does not come from faith is sin. I was like, okay. So I started a company not out of faith, out of fear of a loss of livelihood, out of fear of a loss of employment. And although at the time I was like, no, God, this is what you called me to do, this is what you want me to do. Fun Friday Comedy brought so much joy and encouragement to so many people who were feeling isolated and lonely. And, IYH has been able to do virtual parties to help people feel connected. Like, there was good that came out of it. But in all honesty, it was based out of fear. So, according to this scripture, it was sinful. And so my brain, it has a difficulty wrapping itself around the concept that something that I presume to be good could possibly be sin. And so I know that's very broad and it's very wide. And you're like, okay, where the heck are we going here? The first thing I want to address is making sure that everything that we do is based out of faith. And how do we know if it's based in faith? Because it's backed up by the Bible. All right. And so I'm like, all right, well, I don't see any scriptures in the Bible. It tells me to go start a business. I don't see those. Right. I see a lot of scriptures, a lot of good stuff, but none of them say go start a business. And so I have to look at the author and perfecter of my faith. I have to look at Jesus and the way he went about getting God's direction before he moved forward with something that he felt in his heart he was supposed to do. And so I want to take us over to Matthew 26, verses 36 through 46. And this is Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Whoa, hold on. You talking about the Garden of Gethsemane now? First, you talking about everything is sinful. It's not done in faith. Now we talking about Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus going to the cross. Like, what type of message is this? Like I said, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. I prayed, I opened, I receive, and so I'm sharing. And this is the obedience that I'm talking about. The consequence of obedience sometimes is not very pleasant. It's not, right? And so going back to the story where I hurt my ankle, right? I hurt my ankle got better, okay? The schools reopened this past fall, went back to work. 6 weeks into work, tore my ACL. So I'm like, all right, something's up. Like, either I'm too old to be doing this. My body is too crippled to be doing it. Something's up. How do I keep messing up all my lower appendages? How is this possible? I don't understand. And so I want us to go to the Garden of Gethsemane, because this is where Jesus found answers. This is where Jesus found help. This is where Jesus found support. But more importantly, this is where he found clarity. He found clarity, and that clarity is what gave him strength to finish the task. That clarity gave him strength to be obedient, even till death on a cross. All right, and so we're gonna go through this a little bit. So if you're not familiar with the story, the night before Jesus is crucified, he goes to isolated place, the Garden of Gethsemane, and he takes a couple of disciples with him. All right, and we're going to pick up in verse 37. He says, he took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. So one of the first things we see is that when Jesus had to face something that was challenging or overwhelming, he didn't do it alone. All right, so the first point is, don't go alone. There's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, you go by yourself. But if you want to go far, you go together. And so the first point is, one of the consequences of obedience is that you're not alone, right? And so Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane. He says that my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me. Like, he is the Son of Man. He is God incarnate. Like, he's asking for support. He's asking for help. He's asking for someone to be there with him in a difficult time. And so the first point that I want to make is we don't have to do these things alone. Like, God has given us tons of resources and tons of different community, people who want to see us thrive, people who want to see us win, right? Like, they don't want to see us like just get by, just get the crumbs from the master's table. Like, they want to see us eat. And so we don't have to do these things alone. Jesus didn't do it alone. He did it with the help of his friends. And so going on in the scriptures, it says, going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, my Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. One of the first things that I had to come to grips with was I didn't ask God what he wanted me to do when I initially started the company. I got an idea, sounded like a good idea. It was in my wheelhouse of stuff to do. So boom, I ran with it. I didn't take the time to consult the advice of many others. Honestly, I didn't. I said, Ron, I need your help to do this thing. I didn't say, babe, let's sit in prayer and figure out what the best mode of execution would be for this idea I have. I was just like, let's do it. He's a dope man. So he was like, all right, baby, let's do it. And so we did it. And again, I don't think that it was an idea to like get rich quick. It was an idea to hurt people or to go against the will of God. But I didn't seek God's will when I started it. I didn't do what Jesus did. I didn't try to get a community together first and say, hey, here's an idea that I have. What do you think? I'm pitching this idea to you. Do you think that this is profitable? Do you think that this is successful? Like, what do you think? Right? And not just saying this to anybody, because there's a lot of people that's, they negative Nancy's, and you don't need that. Right? You got to know who you can go to get good, sound, godly advice. And he took his homeboys with him. So he knew who he was asking to help him. Verse 40, it says that when he returned to his disciples, he found them sleeping. It says, couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour? He asked Peter, watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Second point, where are you? Who are you? What? Where are you? Who are you? So when Jesus took these two boys with him, they didn't understand what he was asking. They didn't understand what he needed. They knew maybe where the Garden of Gethsemane was, but they didn't know who was asking them to show up for them. When you step out in faith, the first thing you need to figure out is who you are. Who are you? Right? And if you don't know who you are, that's the first step. Before you go and seek advisors or counsel or ask people if this idea seems like a good one, if it's helpful, if it's profitable, you got to figure out who you are, because the second question, where are you? Like, that is a question that God has been asking people from the time of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? And so these gentlemen, although they've rocked with Jesus for so many years, they didn't know who he was and what he was asking of them. And because they didn't know who he was, they didn't know who they were. They didn't know the place that they had in his life. Right? And so us not knowing the power that we have, Jesus gave them immense power in just a request to come with him. But they didn't understand that. They didn't understand that they were useful to the master. They probably thought, oh, we're just going to accompany him. He's our teacher. We're beneath him. They didn't understand that they were useful to the master. And I feel, for me, that's something I stay struggling with. Not feeling like I'm useful to the master, not feeling like I have something to share to the world, not feeling like my gift matters. And that's because I don't know who I am at times, because I don't know where I am. And so what does that mean? Where are you? So I explained this to someone earlier today. God gave me a gap. I don't know if y'all can see it when I smile. I got a gap. See that gap? It's a beautiful gap. My mama got a gap too. So a long line of gaps in my family. I love gaps. But the idea of a gap in your life is that there is a promise, right? Whenever God has done anything great or grand, there is always this area where there is a gap between the promise and the provision. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. There was a gap between the promise and the provision. Abram and Sarai, right? Before they were Abraham and Sarah, they waited 75 years to have a kid after they were promised. There was a gap between the promise and the provision. When Jesus called his disciples, a lot of them, according to some biblical notes and Dead Sea Scrolls, a lot of them were under the impression that Jesus came to overthrow the Roman government. They were like, oh, you're going to be king. You're going to be king, like you're the Messiah. You came to rescue us. Great. So this is going to happen now. And it didn't happen now. It was 3 years later. And now Jesus is like, I'm overwhelmed to the point of death. And his disciples are like, nah, bro. Like we rock with you because you're going to overthrow the government. Like you're going to save us, right? You're going to rescue Israel from these pagans, right? That's what you came to. That's how we rocking with you. That's why we followed you for 3 years, bro. What you mean you overwhelmed? What you mean you got a down across? What did you? There's a gap between the promise and the provision. Where are you? What part of the gap are you in? Are you closer to the provision? So much so you can see the promised land? Or are you barely hanging on to the promise? That dream that God put in your heart, that desire that God put in your spirit, that calling he has on your life, are you closer to the beginning? Or can you taste the land flowing with milk and honey? Where are you? So when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays twice. And he prays again a third time, not my will, but yours be done. Not my will, but yours be done. And so this is where I am. I don't have all the answers. I only got a couple answers. I got a lot of questions. Like, am I doing it the way it's supposed to be done? The businesses that I want to create, the lifestyle that I want to live, am I doing it the way it's supposed to be done? All right? Or am I embellishing? Am I tweaking God's promise? Am I tweaking the way the provision should look? Right? Have I become a glory thief where I want to presume to do things God's way But in the end, I really want the accolades. I want the big ups. I want them to be like, wow, I can't believe she came from that. And now she's there. Amazing. She's dope. Or do I really desire to be a reflection for people to be like, oh my gosh, she came from that and now she's there? Wow, God's amazing. So back to my initial story. God allowed my ankle to get all jacked up right at the beginning of COVID. Went back to work, to a job that he specifically was like, yeah, I think your time here is done. And I was like, nah, I just bought a house. I got a mortgage. I gotta go back, guy. I hear what you're saying, sir. But yeah, I'm gonna go back because I still got a pension I want to collect later. And I got a whole nother like 17 years. So can we put a pause on this situation? I put a pause on it real quick. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back later after can I get half of my pension? Can I wait till I get vested? Is that allowed? We just wait? Right? And so my third point, and this could just be my point for me, when God decided to allow my ankle to get jacked up, when God decided to have my ACL totally blow out, was it to straighten my walk with him? Or was it to redirect where I was walking to? And that's the question you have to ask yourself. Did God put you where you are right now? This gap that you're in, is it to straighten your walk? Is it to get you to a place of humility before him? Is it to get you as close to him as you could possibly be, to the point where if he whispers, it's like a shout to you? Or is he trying to redirect where you're walking toward? Maybe you had a plan to do X, Y, and Z, and he's like, yeah, but that's not my plan. So crack, let me break your leg. So when it mends and it heals, you learn how to walk the direction I want you to go. Right? The consequence of obedience. Now, I'm be honest, I don't know what's next. All I know is that I'm standing in a gap. And I know that there has been an anointing put on my life. And I know that God is Jehovah Jireh. And he's the provider that I need for any provision. So as long as I hold on to the promise, and as long as I trust the provider, I'm gonna get the provision. For right now, I'm gonna stand in the gap. And I'm gonna let God give me some GOD, some good, orderly direction. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you. Hopefully this hits you in a way that allows you to reflect and be still and understand that obedience is dope, but there are consequences to both sides of the coin. Whether you obey or you disobey, there's always going to be a consequence. As for me, I'm tired of living life as a scaredy cat. I'm ready to step out on faith and stand in a gap for myself and for others. God bless you guys. Peace.
20 minutes of power.